Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Well, I think I figured something out here today. I said we were going to do a mock draft, and we are. I'm going to do a Green Bay Packers 7-round mock draft. But one of the complications, and maybe you don't need to overthink it, just do a mock draft, whatever. But one of the complications is, how do you continually do something different while doing the same thing all the time? I want to keep doing mock draft Monday, but there's got to be something to it, you know? Mock draft plus something, whether it's, let's assume the Packers do this, then what, or, whatever. An all rumors mock draft, which would be probably impossible, but an all meetings mock draft, although they've met with 1 billion people, you could do that. But I had a thought that I thought would be, all the other ones are whatever, maybe, but this one I like. And it fits with what I've been working on, which is utilizing AI and its massive database of information to try to find comps. Figure, love or hate AI, that's one of the things it's going to be very good at. And another thing I mentioned yesterday, or whatever day it was that when I picked Nick Scorton in the first round, that one of the cool things about him is that he's comped, one of the people he was comped to was Trey Hendrickson. Now, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Trey Hendrickson actually is a pretty popular name among Packer fans. Packer fans seem to like the guy quite a bit because he's a really good football player. And so I thought, what if we did an all-redemption Green Bay Packers mock draft? That is to say, and this is kind of what the point of the comps was from my perspective anyways. I mean, comps are cool to kind of give you an idea in a snapshot because we know NFL players. We have a general idea. So when you talk about a guy and you say, well, he's kind of, he's got good routes, and Teteroa McMillan, for example. Well, I mean, he's, 6'4" or something. He's tall, good route runner, not a ton of speed, this, that, or the other. And it's like, okay, cool. It's like, what if I told you he was Michael Thomas? Oh, yeah, okay, now I get it. Which, by the way, I do like that comp for him. There's a lot of comps for him as far as just being a big receiver. Mike Williams or something, but I don't know if I like Mike Williams very much. Michael Thomas, though, I like that one. Shamar Stewart is easy for Packer fans, but freak athlete, uber talented. Got this weird little thing, though, where the production wasn't quite there. The sack numbers were quite low. Rashawn Gary. Jalen Walker, Micah Parsons. And it's not even necessarily that they're, that good. It's one of the issues people have a lot of times is they'll find the best possible case of a player like that. And it ends up being somewhat of an unrealistic comp, but it's kind of a stylistic thing. So imagine Micah Parsons, but he might not be as good as Micah Parsons. Or how about Anthony Barr, which is a weird one because the Vikings stupidly decided to make him an inside linebacker, or Hassan Reddick or something, Anyways, comps can be very cool for that reason. But what if we kind of did it backwards and we said, man, we missed out on Trey Hendrickson. How can I go find a Trey Hendrickson? We missed out on DK Metcalf. How can we go find a DK? I want Devontae Adams. I want to rectify missing out on Creed Humphrey when we took Josh Myers. Who's the Cooper DeJean of this mock draft? It's very similar to what we've kind of been doing in terms of even when I did the man coverage thing where it's just checking boxes. Because we're looking for a certain type of prospect. This is just a hyper-specific way of doing that. Screw the traits. Find me the guy. And so, even sitting here right now, because the idea popped into my head, I sat down, I pushed record. Partially because I was excited, and partially because I have a massive procrastination problem, and as soon as it came to me, I was like, just start, just go, just let's go. Before you start searching Twitter or going through your emails or whatever nonsense. The process of how to go through this, I'm not entirely sure, but we're going to go ahead and do it. And I think we'll probably do it in the way that, I've always said you don't do mock drafts this way with positional need first, but considering what we're doing, which is just going out and finding people we want and filling needs and everything, that's kind of the goal today. I think we'll probably just do it anyways. And you know what? Maybe I'll pull up that other sheet I did to kind of show the strengths and weaknesses thing. So I guess the question is, who do we want? You know what I mean? Let's go ahead and kick this thing off. So here's the thing. There's no point in actually doing a mock. It doesn't really matter who other teams pick. We just need it to be somewhat realistic, because this is also kind of an exercise in just learning about some prospects. So I'm not actually going to run a mock. It's not really necessary. But here's going to be sort of the methodology, I guess. I'm going to go in. I'm going to find somebody in the NFL. Like, pretend you could trade for anybody. Now, some of these guys are going to be nearly impossible to find, but we'll poke through and see what we can do. All right, so let's get started here and look at some pass rushers. We're going to look at the defensive line, specifically edge, first of all. I think I'm going to start off here with pass rush productivity, because it's kind of a mix of production, but also making sure we get the old sacks going here. And of course, my eyes are drawn right to you know who. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson, Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons. I'm not so sure, but the problem with Aiden and Myles Garrett is that they're absolute freaks. I'll take a look and see if we can find something similar, but I don't know. And then Micah Parsons, I probably know who that pick's going to be. I wonder. I'm probably overthinking it, but I don't know if 245-pound Micah Parsons, I mean, he does play, I guess he does both, outside linebacker and down defensive end. He does it well. But anyways, I kind of just glanced past them, and the very next guy on the list is Trey Hendrickson. And then Alex Highsmith would be another one here. He's another small guy. There's a lot of smaller guys, man. And good old Chop Robinson. That was my dude last year, man. So sad we couldn't get Chop Robinson. And then I want to take a glance over at defensive tackle. Obviously, we know like the three that would be options for us. It's kind of interesting, actually. The top two are John Franklin Myers and Braden Fisk, the friggin' rookie, of course. John Franklin Myers is interesting. Don't really know much about him, but he's been kind of killing it as a pass rusher. 6'4", 288, kind of a smaller guy. Braden Fisk, 6'5", 297. All right, so, I mean, there's a couple of ways we could do it. We could do just prospects we missed out on or wish that we had, and then also just anybody in the world. But we got a decent base to work with here. But I got to start with Trey Hendrickson. Obviously, I already said Nick Scorton, but I'm going to reverse engineer it. First of all, I'm going to use a different AI than I used last time, and I'm also going to, rather than starting with Nick Scorton and saying, go find me an NFL prospect, I'm going to start with him and see. All right, so here's the dealio. I spent a little bit of time with this. I've got quite a few prospects, and it's funny because I just talked about this yesterday. But here's what we're going to do with the 23rd pick. One of the people that, and I've tried a bunch of different guys. The hard part is trying to get people to line up, right? So I've got like 2 picks at 54, 2 at 87, trying to find people at different spots here. I thought everybody would be a first-round pick, but it actually took me a long time to find anybody that lined up with a first-round pick. But we got one. One of the people that has been talked about as far as we missed out, we picked this dud, and 1 pick later, somebody ended up with a great football player. Back in 2019, the Green Bay Packers selected Jace Sternberger out of Texas A&M. 1 pick later, the Washington Redskins selected Terry McLaurin, wide receiver out of Ohio State. So I asked, who is the most similar to Terry McLaurin in this year's class? Answer, Luther Burden III. So with the 23rd pick, the Green Bay Packers will select Luther Burden. Now, McLaurin was a little bit faster, but it's not anything crazy. It's 206 compared to 210. It's 441 compared to 435. But in terms of similarities, height, weight, and 40 time are all very similar. Both are skilled route runners that are capable of getting open at all levels and can play both outside and in the slot. Both showed high production, with Burden recording 83 receptions for 1,197 yards and 8 touchdowns in his final season. The biggest difference here is actually probably to the benefit of Luther Burden, which makes sense because Terry McLaurin was a third-round pick, Luther Burden is a first-round pick, but Luther Burden is more noted for his exceptional yard-after-the-catch ability and elusiveness, while McLaurin was more of a possession receiver with reliable hands. But otherwise, they matched up really, really well. And so there you go. The streak is officially broken. The Green Bay Packers, with the first pick, their first-round pick since I think like 2002, the Green Bay Packers select Luther Burden. And the curse of Terry McLaurin is officially dead. Now at 54, we've got a couple different options here. Again, I went through and I found a handful of people. I got to do more, but we've got several picks kind of accounted for, so we'll just go with what we got for now. It's going to be tough to find 6th and 7th round picks, but I got to decide which direction we're going to go here. And I think I know. One of the thoughts was to, as I said, find, sort of rectify old situations, TJ Watt, Terry McLaurin, whatever, Creed Humphrey. The other, though, is to just find really good players and find people that compare to them. And one of the best in the game is Chris Jones, the defensive tackle for the Chiefs. And his best comp, and there were several here, Ty Robinson out of Nebraska was a decent comp. Charles Grant out of Williams and Mary was a decent comp. But the best actual comp was Alfred Collins, defensive tackle out of Texas. They're both 6'6". Collins is heavier, but they have similar arm length at 35 inches. Other things that they matched on: tremendous natural power, strong and physical at the point of attack, excellent run defender, can shed blocks without much effort, can generate pocket push, good potential to play in multiple fronts, high effort player, more of a run stuffer than a pass rusher. That's going to be where it's a little weird, where it's like, well, Chris Jones is this and that, and Alfred Collins is this. But again, I'm not going based on what they're doing in the NFL. I'm going based on what people said about them in college. More of a run stuffer than a pass rusher. Weaknesses that match: need to improve as a pass rusher, sometimes plays with high pad level, average ball instincts, and not a consistent sack producer. So in total, out of 24 data points, he matched on 18 of the 24. Now, I'll admit, being a 330-pound defensive tackle makes it feel unlikely that he's going to end up being a Chris Jones, but it's a 20-pound difference. Let's say he sheds 15 pounds, whatever. I don't care how you want to do it. The bottom line is we got our own Chris Jones and Alfred Collins. All right, why don't we take a break here? We'll come back and start the third round. We got more work to do. All right, so as you know, the first guy I actually started with was Trey Hendrickson. And although Nick Scorton was an option, it wasn't the top option. And since Trey Hendrickson was actually, I believe, a third-round pick, I thought, you know what, this actually kind of works in the third round. So for those of you that are kind of in the game here, I'll see if you can guess who it is. You might already be able to guess. Similar sizes, 6'4", 248 to 254 range, so a little bit smaller. Has the same second effort pass rushing style, strong against the run, good lateral quickness, forced multiple fumbles in his final season, special teams contributor. Some of the differences: slightly lighter, like I said, longer arms, a little bit slower, 4.73 compared to 4.65, more accomplished pass rusher with 11.5 sacks in his final season, an SEC Defensive Player of the Year and Bronco Nagurski Trophy winner. I'll let you contemplate that for a minute. The second best comp was Nick Scorton, followed by James Pierce Jr., who's a little bit smaller, but again, a lot of the other things matched up. And then Antoine Powell Ryland. The answer of who we're picking in the third round to match and get our own version of Trey Hendrickson is South Carolina's Kyle Canard. Based on the analysis, Kyle Canard appears to be the closest match to your prospect's profile. He has a similar frame at 6'4", similar playing style as a second-effort rusher, good ability to force fumbles, and projects as a developmental 4-3 defensive end. While he's slightly lighter and has longer arms, his overall skill set, athletic profile, and developmental trajectory most closely align with your prospect. I keep saying your prospect because I didn't tell it his name because I didn't want it to be biased and start searching the internet and saying, finding what other people said. I wanted it to do its own. So I stripped out the names. I said, here's the profile. Go find me these guys. Both players are known for their effort, ability to impact special teams, and having a good club/hand move to soften the edge. Canard is projected as a mid to late day 2 pick, slightly higher than your prospect's day 3 projection, but this is likely due to his more productive college career and accolades. Again, I'll repeat, Trey Hendrickson was a 3rd round pick, just like Kyle Canard is probably likely to be. So, we got our wide receiver. We got a defensive tackle that, probably, whatever, it's fine. He's Chris Jones, shut up. Then we got our Trey Hendrickson at 87 in Kyle Canard. What if we zoomed in a little bit and said, who is a recent miss that people are whining and crying and wailing and gnashing their teeth about? It shouldn't take you more than 3 seconds to figure it out. It's Mr. Cooper DeJean. Now, the funny thing is, when I first did this, it went and found 3 people that were very similar. All of them were safeties, which makes perfect sense. And I said, okay, cool. What if we went ahead and did corner, though? And it found us quite a few. Some of the guys that we're not going to go with, Tommy Hill out of Nebraska. He's a little bit bigger build, but similar height. He had 14 out of 24 matches. Jahdae Barron, who we would have had to have taken already, but it's worth mentioning. Jahdae Barron is kind of in that mold. Certainly would hate to miss out on that twice. Very similar height and weight. He's like an inch shorter and, 8 pounds lighter. Denzel Burke out of Ohio State was another one. He had 9 out of 24, which is, I guess, something. But in the 4th round, we will officially be going with, let's see if I can give you a couple hints here. Again, for the big-time draft nerds that have gotten the top 100, 200 down pat. 6 foot compared to Cooper DeJean's 6'1.5". 199 pounds compared to 203. Fantastic interception production with 7 interceptions in 2024. Great ability to recognize routes. Good instincts to challenge quarterbacks. Physical tackler with 52 tackles in 2024. Plays best with his eyes forward. Uses length to compete for the ball. Forced a fumble in 2024. Weaknesses that match. More suited for zone than man. Questions about fluidity and coverage. Athletic testing, 40-yard dash was a 4.5. I don't know what Cooper's was, but it says it's a match, so we'll assume it was close. 15 out of 24 total matches. And some of them are question marks like arm and hand measurements, which weren't available for this prospect. The answer to the question for our brand spanking new Cooper DeJean is Noel Williams, cornerback out of Cal. And then moving on to the 5th round, we don't have a super big need, in my opinion, at this point. Would like to start getting some offensive line, and then beyond that, maybe start doubling up on things, which is where this kind of worked out. I was trying to find a 1st-round prospect, and I ended up finding a 5th-round prospect, but I'm fine with it because I wanted to find a comp for the one and only Davante Adams. Interestingly enough, so some of the guys that didn't make the cut, I was kind of surprised to see a guy that I've mentioned before I'm a big fan of, Trey Harris. Didn't make sense at first because, Trey Harris is a giant, but aside from being an 1.5 inches taller, roughly, similar weight, similar arm length, hand size, 40 time, 10-yard split, vert, broad jump, go through the similarities in playing style, possession receiver with starter caliber traits, great body control and catch radius, natural hands, which Davante obviously struggled with that once he got to the pros. Tracks the ball well downfield, can make difficult contested catches, good at finding soft spots in zone, not a burner but moves well for their size, strong performance in the red zone. But we're not doing that. Obviously, Trey Harris would be gone at this point. Luther Burden, also a decent comp for Davante, which makes that even more interesting. It's crazy how many people check the Luther Burden box or vice versa. He just seems to be more of a, right in the middle of the road, does a lot of things well. He's going to end up doing that. 5'11", 208, similar measurements. He is faster, obviously 4.41 compared to 4.51, but a lot of similar play style things. But the guy that we're going to go with that is the closest to the traits of Davante Adams. I'll give you the stats so you guys can play along here. Wide receiver, obviously. He is 6'4", so he's like 3 inches taller, so there's that. I mean, we're getting down to it here. It's getting tough. But exact same weight at 212 pounds, similar arm length, and similar hand size. His 40 time was a 4.46, which is, a little bit slower in today's standards, but closer to Davante. Described as a possession receiver, natural hands catcher who plucks the ball away from his frame. Good at contested catches, tracks and adjusts the ball well downfield, finds soft spots in zone coverage, not a burner but has enough speed. Good body control and catch radius, long strider with good speed, developmental upside. Areas of concern, and these are similarities, need to improve release against press, not sudden out of breaks, inconsistent production. Had some issues with drops, and then simple route trees. I don't know if that was supposed to be one of the similarities or whatever, but the wide receiver we'll be selecting, and I believe the 5th round here, is Caden Prather out of Maryland. Well-built possession receiver with the size teams look for on the outside. Good hands and ball skills, but lacks elite separation ability. Projected as a mid-round pick, rounds 3 to 5, with developmental potential. With a 6th-round pick, I wanted to try to look for some offensive line help, and I couldn't help but try to find somebody that sort of mirrors Creed Humphrey. It's going to be hard to do later on, but, we're kind of painting with some broad strokes here at this point. And then I thought, let me try something. And I grabbed a range of interior offensive linemen, and I said, who else I miss? Josh Sitton. I miss that guy a lot. He was such a good football player, mean frickin' guy. Great pass blocker, but man, that dude could run block too. One of the best offensive linemen I think the Packers have had. Interestingly enough, when I just broad strokes said, hey, who's the most like Creed Humphrey, one of the guys that actually kind of fits in this range is also the same guy in this range that it thought most fit in with Josh Sitton. So that makes my decision very, very easy. First of all, very similar to Sitton in terms of size. Sitton was 6'3", 318. This guy is 6'3", 315. Known for his durability, starting at this school, recorded 56 games, cerebral player, mastering multiple offensive systems. Sort of an Iron Man because he didn't really miss any games. Scouting reports highlight his consistency and football intelligence, solid run blocking skills as part of the Joe Moore Award finalist team in 2023. Iron Man mentality aligns with Sitton's starting 142 out of 148 games. That man, and the one big difference is this guy's primarily a center, which is fine because, like I said, kind of want a Creed Humphrey type anyways. That man is Jake Majors out of Texas. And now in the 7th round, good luck finding, your TJ Watts and whatnot, which, by the way, is exactly what we're about to do. Like another edge rusher, and I cannot do a redemption draft without finding a TJ Watt. By the way, I already had a TJ Watt, and that would have been in the 2nd round had we not gone Alfred Collins. And the only reason I decided to go that route is because I already had a Trey Hendrickson in the 3rd round. I didn't have another defensive tackle lined up. But Jack Sawyer was seen as sort of the TJ Watt if we were going to go that route in the 2nd, possibly even the 1st round. I had considered that instead of Terry McLaurin. But anyways, we did what we did. And so in the 7th round, again, we can't not continue without trying to find someone. And so, in order to rectify all of history's mistakes, we have found our next TJ Watt. He is 6'4", 269 pounds, a little bit bigger, but that's all right. 4'6", 40, 162, 10 yards split. Pretty athletic fella. The man goes by the name of Ethan Downs, edge rusher out of Oklahoma. And I'll tell you what, for the last pick, I'm just going to do what I want because I'm having fun. Who do I want back on this team? I've told you we don't need this position at all. But I don't care because I want him back and I miss him. And that is none other than Cheeseburger Eddie Lacy. The 5'11", 250-pound phenom. Can we find a guy like that? No, of course not. It's ridiculous. There's only one Eddie Lacy. There will only ever be one Eddie Lacy. But we can get close enough. Big, explosive, and offers flashes of raw power. 6 foot, 235 pounds. That's right. In the 7th round in our final pick, the Green Bay Packers are selecting Raheem Sanders, running back out of South Carolina. We're going to take a break. When we come back on the other side, we're going to actually take a deeper look at these guys, get acquainted with our new team, see what we can't figure out about them. All right, we'll take a break. We'll be right back. All right, so Luther Burden, and listen, he's probably a slot guy. He played primarily slot in his last 2 years at Missouri. He was only there 3 years, really only started, well, that's not true. But 60% from the slot in his career, 82% in 2023, and that went up to 85% in 2024. His first year, where he only was at about 13%, he had a 65 PFF grade. And you could say, well, he just got better as the years went on. It wasn't necessarily because of the slot, et cetera, et cetera. His grade went down to a 78 in 2024, an 80 receiving grade. When I look at, I can't see his grades when he wasn't in the slot, but I can see his grades when he was in the slot. 42 receptions, 508 yards, 4 touchdowns, 12.1 yards per reception. He had an 82.4 receiving grade. It's not that much different, but if you think about it, if 85%, almost every single snap, came in the slot and it was an 82%, and the 15% you weren't was enough to bring your grade from an 82 down to an 80, it might not have been a 40, but I don't know that it was the greatest grade in the world. So that partially concerns me, but I just want to flesh this idea out, because a lot of his skill sets, first of all, almost, what is he, like 6 foot 208, very normal wide receiver size. It's not like he's 5'9", 195 or something. So he's a normal sized receiver, maybe a little on the slight side, but 21 years old, really young. And again, when you look at the comps of this guy, occasionally you'll get like a Tyler Lockett or something, but a lot of times it tends to be sort of the hybrid guys that can make that jump. It's not even necessarily can make that jump. They're just kind of seen as like boundary guys that can play in the slot more than anything, but I just think it's somewhat worth exploring. Do I think the Packers will do it? No, I don't. It doesn't seem to be a thing that the Packers are super interested in. There have been a ton of sort of hybrid / gadgety, not saying Luther Burden is, but if you think about sort of the hybrid slot gadgety Debo types, Kadarius Toney types, whatever, I don't know that I've seen a lot of interest from the Packers. But again, I don't want to just completely rule it out, and I can't help but notice when you start talking about different comps how Luther Burden continues to pop up, and I'm not talking Jaden Reed, I'm talking Terry McLaurin. So, he didn't miss a ton of time, so a little bit underwhelming as far as the statistics. 676 yards, 6 touchdowns, but again, still an 80 grade, 80 receiving grade. In the year before, full season, 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns, almost a 90 grade, and then a 91 receiving grade. Great hands. Last 2 years, his drop rate were 4.7 and 4.4. Roughly a 50% contested catch rate. It was 56 and 54 his last 2 years. His rookie year really dragged him down, but his last 2 years, about 55%. Alfred Collins in the second round, as I said, probably a little bit iffy when it comes to trying to stretch it to Chris Jones, but I wanted to let the experiment play out. The bottom line is, though, I mean, he's a decent enough football player if you're looking for this type of a guy. If you're looking for a one technique, if you're looking for a nose tackle type of guy, I don't really see a scenario where this makes sense for the Packers. Not to say the Packers don't utilize one techniques, but I think we did a good enough job against the run. I don't know how. Credit to Edger and Cooper. And Quay when he played, and the safeties. Not to completely denigrate the defensive tackles, but I don't know that they did a phenomenal job. And you could argue that if you get a guy like this at the one tech spot, he can eat up more blocks, freeing up some guys to rush the passer. I just think he's too one-dimensional. Again, I know it seems weird to denigrate your own picks, but that was its own fun thing. Now we're just exploring prospects and learning a little bit. To get into this, 87 overall grade, which is phenomenal. 85 run defense, and 70 pass rush, which isn't bad. But the production is dog crap. He had 18 pressures on 305 attempts and 1 sack. The year before that, he did have 23 pressures on 220, so just above 10%, but even then, 2 sacks. In 5 years, and it looks like he kind of started all 5 years, 6 sacks. 6 sacks in 5 years. 78 pressures on 1,007 attempts. So he is what he is. I don't see a purpose in a pick like this. Kyle Canard, a guy not talked about as much by moi. He is an outside linebacker at South Carolina. Prior to that, he spent 4 years at Georgia Tech where he did play down defensive end, so he's been able to do both things. His 4th year at Georgia Tech is when he kind of finally broke out. Then he transfers to South Carolina and continues to get better. Age is potentially a problem here, though, at 23. But a 77 grade, 72 run defense, and 80 pass rush, 39 pressures, and 10 sacks on 310 attempts. So he finally came into his own, whether you want to take that super seriously or not. As a, again, 23-year-old, took him 5 years to get there. Plus, he was a stand-up outside linebacker, meaning maybe that's kind of his jam. But big athletic dude. Again, he's sort of the Trey Hendrickson comp. Looks like he's played pretty consistently for 3 straight years without a bunch of injury issues. Noel Williams out of Cal is our Cooper DeJean comp, 6'1", 200 pounds. Played 3 years at UNLV, 2 years at Cal. He's got 3,300 snaps under his belt. He's played a ton. His first 2 years, he looked like sort of a semi-starter, 300, 400 snaps, which is about as many as some of these guys play in a general year. Then his final year at UNLV, 700 snaps, and then at Cal it was 967 and 877. So he's played a ton. He's been healthy throughout, and his grades, aside from his rookie year, have been extremely consistent, 78, 72, 72, and 80. His coverage grades 80, 67, 7, and 78. So he has just been a solid producer for 4 straight years across 2 different programs. I don't see his age listed here, but you assume 23-ish, 24, whatever. He's probably getting up there a little bit. Maybe 20, let's see, what has it been, 5 years? So 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 22 going on 23 at the youngest. But also very productive. He had 14 interceptions and 21 pass breakups. This past year, 7 interceptions, 9 pass breakups. So a bit of a ball hawk. Almost an 80 run defense grade, which is not a fluke. 74, 83, and 71 going backwards. Tackling grades, aside from 2023, have been pretty fantastic. So very physical, very tough. Real solid tackler, real good. And I got nothing bad to say about Noel Williams out of Cal. And we got our Devontae Adams, Caden Prather. Little bit underwhelming as far as college. Talked about this before. It's crazy how many guys switch schools. But 2 years at West Virginia and then 2 years at Maryland. His grades have been consistently in the 60s, 64, 67, 69, and 62. Receiving 63, 67, 69, 62. His past year, 620 yards, 4 touchdowns. His best year, 666 and 5 touchdowns. 1.25 yards per route run. He's never cracked 2 yards per route run, 1.52 average. His drop rate's 8%, which is so-so. His contested catch rate is 45%. There's really nothing terrible, but there's nothing good here. Sub 50% contested catch rate. 8% drop rate is probably a little higher than you like. Sub 2 yards per route run. 12 yards per reception is not super high. Never had more than 5 touchdowns in a season. Never had, 700 yards in a season. Doesn't mean he can't do anything, but there's nothing that kind of stands out as a wow factor here. But again, that's kind of Devontae Adams. Now, Devontae had very specific skill sets that made him a second-round pick, right? He great route running and just smooth football player. But, the height, weight, speed stuff, just really not super crazy. Not trying to denigrate Devontae here. I'm just saying he's the 5th, 6th round equivalent of a Devontae Adams. That brings us to center, Jake Majors. Jake Majors has only ever played center, so the Packers will probably be a little leery of that. However, they're going to love this. 5 straight years at Texas, which is nice. His pass blocking grade started 68, 65, and then kabloomy 82, 84, 85 pass blocking grades. He's given up 3 sacks in 5 years, 54 total pressures in 5 years. This past year, 0 sacks, 2 hits, 13 hurries. The run blocking is underwhelming. Go Pack, go. 62, 66, 58, 66, 68. I mean, if he could translate that directly to the Green Bay Packers offensive line, I'm more than fine with that. But if there's any regression whatsoever, we're basically looking at Josh Myers all over again. And again, a 23-year-old. So these guys are a little bit up in age, but at least he's been doing it consistently. It's not like when he turned 22, 23 is when he first started to play. He's been the same guy for 3 straight years. Then we got our TJ Watt, Ethan Downs, 6'4", 265-ish. 4 years at Oklahoma, very consistent. 77, 78, 77, 79. His run defense, 70, 77, 80, 75. Pass rush is 67, 67, 67, 73. So more of a run defender, but solid across the board and really consistent in everything. 25 pressures out of 229 attempts. The year before that, 31 of 279, 31 of 285, 13 of 127. He's at, 11, 12% every year. The sack production is not great, though. 15 sacks in 4 years. So you're looking at 3.5, 4 sacks a season. Actually, it was 1 sack, 5 sacks, 6 sacks in 3 this past year. So I like him. I like that he's probably, 22? Really solid against the run, capable pass rusher. The sack production, again, is not great, but you hope that, get a little bit of education, see how that goes. And then our very own Eddie Lacy, also known as Raheem Sanders, running back out of South Carolina. 6 foot, 235-pound beast. This past year, 183 attempts, 881 yards, 4.8 yards per attempt, 11 touchdowns, 3 fumbles, 81 PFF grade, 86 rushing grade, 3.69 yards after contact, 46 missed tackles forced is pretty crazy. He's got 144 in 4 years. He's kind of on and off here. He had he missed time, but 1965, 14, 46. His career average yards per attempt is 5.4. His career average yards after contact per attempt is 3.25 yards. Longest rush was 76 yards and has a 91 elusiveness grade, which I still to this day don't know what that means, but, it's great. As a receiver, 68 grade, 311 yards, 11.5 yards per attempt, and 2 touchdowns this past season. One thing he's got to work on is the pass blocking. 50, it's ugly. So he's had 120 total attempts in his 4 years, 3 at Arkansas, 1 at South Carolina. His grades, 29 as a rookie, then 53, then 53. Okay, there's a little improvement there. And then 35. 51 pass blocking attempts. He gave up 1 sack, 2 hits, 6 hurries, 9 total pressures in 51 attempts. That's like 1 in 5. Your quarterback's getting messed up once every 5 times you're trying to block for him. That definitely sucks, but I don't care. I just don't care. How about them apples? All right, I tell you what, that's it for me today. I will talk to you all tonight, tomorrow, whatever. Have a good one. Bye-bye.